Hi, everybody in podcast land and also on YouTube. Welcome to Carpool Critics. I'm James.
I'm David.
I'm Riley.
And today we're talking about Iron Man.
Spoiler alert! That's our new thing.
This is what
Just so you know, there will be spoilers.
There's always spoilers.
The movie that started it all, kicked off the MCU. So, in retrospect, is it good? A lot of people think it's their favorite one.
What?
I'm surprised.
No?
Really? The favorite one out of... How many are there? 12?
23?
Huh?
22?
There's a good 12, though, for sure.
Oh, you mean like there's 12 good ones out of that 23?
No, I just was... I completely forgot how many there are.
There's
Sorry,
20,
I forgot
21, 22?
I'm sorry, I forgot the
I'm
exact
thinking
number.
James Bond. I don't know. There's lots. And they keep coming.
I should pay more attention, though, because, you know, MCU is basically... It's the new Star Wars. Because they take it seriously.
You know, I was one of those people who hated on MCU movies. Like, I saw the first... In Phase 1, I saw, like, the first three. Like, I saw the first Avengers, I saw Iron Man, I saw Thor.
Yeah.
And then... I think it was Ant-Man, the trailer came on, and I was like, okay, there's too many of these now. Who cares about Ant-Man?
Yeah.
And then years go by.
Yeah.
People like Scorsese are saying that Marvel movies are stupid, and like I'm just not watching any of them. And then everyone makes a big stink about Infinity War and how sweet it is.
Right.
Endgame's coming out. I go see Infinity War. And by go see, I mean on my couch. It ends, and I'm like, whoa, this is better than Star Wars.
Yeah.
This is so much better than Star Wars.
It's kind of funny because when Iron Man came out, the first one, I think we were all so used to these like dumb superhero movies because studios have been trying for so long to make like good superhero movies. And there had been a few, you know? When did Batman Begins come out?
2005.
The year before.
2005.
No. I mean, it came out 2005, and Dark Knight came out the same year as this.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah,
See,
there
we're
already
into-
were good superhero movies.
So those were good, but they're kind of like a different kind of good. You take them a bit more seriously.
There's like normal movies,
Yeah.
they fit up there.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then there's superhero movies, and to be a good superhero movie,
Right.
you don't have to be on that echelon.
I feel like before Iron Man, we had like, you know, Daredevil and the original Spider-Man movies. And to
Those
me-
are good.
No,
and,
they're fine, but
X2 came out, X-Men and X2 are both out. X2 came out in 2003.
Yeah, the X-Men movies are cool, but they're like, I feel like Iron Man was the start of just these complete quality movies. You go see an MCU movie and you know that it's going to be good. Like you're not
What are you talking about?
No, like it's going to be okay. Like you can go see Daredevil and you were like, "All right, that was cool." But it was janky and weird, and there was like some effects that didn't really work, and there was some dialogue that's just like weird. But you go see an MCU movie, Iron Man, everything in this movie is just solid, and I feel like it is the start of a whole run of MCU movies where they're just solid, and there are better ones and there are worse.
Well, you're
ones.
guaranteed to get a A-list cast and a huge budget, right?
sure,
Okay,
for sure.
but we're getting ahead of ourselves.
We are.
First, David, why don't you tell us what you would rank this movie out of 10?
Watching Iron Man in 2020 is like shooting off an expired Roman candle after years of shooting off big-ass Okie toilet crackers, Tijuana finger splitters, and devil's dongs.
Husker D's?
Still
Husker Don'ts?
fun, just a little quaint compared to the newer, better stuff.
Quaint. I like that. Oh, and rating?
7.2.
Okay.
Where's that extra 0.2 come from?
You should ask where the minus 0.8 comes from, but you'll have to ask me that later.
Okay. Riley?
Okay, here's my slogan. It's the tragic origin story of a young man who becomes trapped in a mechanical suit after being crippled by someone he thought was his family. But lightsaber fight aficionados will love it. 5 out of 10.
A 5. I didn't understand anything you just said, by the way.
That's because that was the slogan for the movie I wanted to watch this week, Revenge of the Sith. And I'm disappointed. I know we went back to democracy, and I love you guys, but dang it, I wanted to watch Revenge of the Sith.
Well, apparently Linus and Luke are going to do a commentary track of Star Wars, and I think we should save our Star Wars stuff for when they're doing that.
We
and
will. And I
do a big
was
push.
listening to their WAN show clip, and I was like, there's so many things I want to correct here.
Straight
but,
up wrong.
But anyways, here's my real slogan. Gold titanium alloy man would be more accurate, but like Pepper Potts, this movie cares less about the details of a scientifically advanced armored suit and more about the man inside. Will that be all, Mr. Stark? No way, baby. There's like 9 more movies. 8.5 out of 10.
8.5.
Yep.
Wow.
That's pretty high, Ben.
I really like this movie.
A lot more than Revenge of the Sith.
That wasn't my real rating for Revenge of the Sith.
Okay.
I thought about that for like 2 seconds.
Okay.
Usually I think for a good 10.
What a roller coaster that was.
James?
Iron Man does a good job of forging the tone of the MCU, but ultimately fails to blast off.
Oh my gosh.
6.8. I usually do
6.8.
Yes, I usually
Fails.
round off. I usually do 0.5s or round it off to 0, but I'm doing a 6.8 today.
Oh my gosh, the infection is spreading.
It's David Appreciation Day.
The weird decimal points.
Hell yeah.
What do you mean? You didn't like this one?
That's fine. 6.8. Anything greater than
6.8.
anything greater than 5 is,
Wow, I'm discovering I guess I like this movie way more than you guys.
anything greater than 5 is on the good side. A 7 is like, that's a good movie. I'd recommend to people. This is slightly under because I think it has problems in Act 1 and Act 3. It has like opposite problems.
That's interesting. I found that the weakness of this movie is Act 2 and Act 3, and so I'm excited to see what you think the problems of Act 1 are, because I think that's its strongest act.
Yeah, let's get into that right after Riley just reminds us what this movie's all about.
Billionaire genius playboy Tony Stark is at the top of his game selling advanced weapons to the military.
Like Elon Musk a couple years ago.
Exactly.
Like Elon Musk before
Almost.
Twitter.
Yeah, he hasn't had a kid yet. But when he's captured by terrorists and discovers they're also using his company's weapons, he decides to change his legacy with the help of a fancy chest-mounted flashlight. He builds an armored suit and uses it to escape, making plans to help people with his technology. But Stark Enterprises executive Obadiah Stane has plans of his own, moving from dealing with terrorists under the table to building his own version of the Iron Man suit. To beat the game, Tony Stark must face the most evil force of all, shareholders.
Can we just talk about Obadiah Stane?
What a name.
What kind of stain is it?
But how do you... No, you spell it Stane. So it's a common mistake. He gets that a lot.
Obadiah Stane.
The what? Obadiah.
Oh my god.
Oh.
Let's keep making fun of that guy right after this message from our sponsors. Hey guys, the world's opening up again. You might be on Tinder again soon. Why not shave your nutsack and make it smell good with a little bit of ball toner? That's what you can expect from Manscaped, the best in men's below-the-belt grooming. They offer precision-engineered tools for your family jewels, including the Lawnmower 3.0 with its ceramic blade, 7,000 RPM quiet-stroke motor, and even an LED light like Iron Man's chest thing, so you can see your balls. Do you think that helps Iron Man see his balls? Get 20% off and free shipping with the code CARPOOL at manscaped.com.
He always has perfect ball trimming lighting.
Jarvis, shave my balls. We're also brought to you by Private Internet Access VPN. PIA helps you hide your true IP address so you can bypass geo restrictions and censorship. You can connect up to 5 devices at once, and it includes an internet kill switch, Riley.
Hi-ya!
If your VPN gets disconnected involuntarily. PIA is available for Windows, Mac, Android, iOS, and even has a Chrome extension, so check it out at lmg.gg/carpoolpia.
It's a ninja cutting the kill switch on.
Like a Chris Farley ninja.
Yeah. Yeah! Man, okay, so this is interesting. I feel like I have such high respect for this movie going in because of the later accomplishments that it set up. Like the MCU's success.
Like it gets a little boost from that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think when most people saw this movie, they were like, oh, this is a pretty good superhero movie. But I think like seeing the threads laid out and knowing later how they're going to pay off, just like, I don't know. I love it.
See, I actually kind of had the opposite reaction. In my head, this movie was more tightly connected to everything that happens later. But on this rewatch, it didn't seem as nearly as risky as I remember it. It's like a pretty safe, self-contained movie. And there's the post-credit scene that ties it. But really, like, they weren't investing that hard into this big vision idea. They were just like, they had a vision, but this movie doesn't necessarily rely on that. And I think I was looking for a little bit more connective tissue, but maybe that just wasn't fair.
Yeah, it was off the strength of this movie. Like this movie did really well, and after that, then they got distribution, like a deal signed for like the next 4 or something like that, and it took off. Did they even have Marvel Studios?
No, that was later.
This was still like the film division of Marvel.
Yep.
They didn't have Marvel Studios yet. In the time of Avi Arad, the mentor of Kevin Feige, that guy, like a year later, he resigned, and then Kevin Feige got promoted to chief of Marvel Studios. And at age 33.
Wow.
Oh, that
Interesting.
makes me sad.
He's talented.
Can you imagine that?
And now he's like 43, I guess, or something. 40 something.
Oh, he's a lot older.
How do you do math? To me, this ushered in an era where if it was a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, You'd go in knowing that it's going to be good.
See, I strongly disagree. I think the Marvel Cinematic Universe actually didn't start that strong. This is a good movie, but then we got like Captain America: First Avenger, which is okay. Thor.
I like Thor.
The Hulk.
Thor was fine. Well, the
these
Hulk
are all-
the Hulk doesn't really count.
Sure does.
Well,
but
sort of.
in general, I'd say like, but only in the first phase, the two movies that I'd say are like good or above are this and Avengers. I think everything else is okay, and so I don't think they're better than like X-Men 1 or 2 or Spider-Man 1 or 2, and they're certainly not better than the Batman movies that we had just gotten.
You just disgusted me.
You're
Spider-Man 1 and 2 are like, they're good. I never liked Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I they didn't really speak to me, those movies. I think they were definitely part of my childhood, so I was like connected to them, but rewatching clips of them, I'm like, here's maybe the crux of the issue. With old superhero movies, I feel like they tried really hard to kind of like directly adapt the feel of a comic book where things are cheesy and cartoony. And with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think what they did is not so much directly adapt it as like transform it for modern audiences. So that's what I think is the beauty of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is creating a comic universe that feels like it's from our generation.
Well, the X-Men movies were like that. They wore leather instead of spandex.
Yeah, I think you're remembering
that's
it
an
wrong.
attempt.
I think you're remembering the entirety of the MCU, but that first phase was like kind of awkward, and like they hadn't figured it out. Like they were comic booky movies. Like Captain America's super comic booky.
Sometimes I try to pull a fast one on my wife. I'll put on a Marvel movie to see if she knows. Because if it's like, if it's not a superhero-y scene, maybe I'm just watching a drama, right? So I put on the weekend, late at night, I was like, let's throw on Doctor Strange. The VFX of the movie is sweet.
Oh, yeah.
I put it on. She comes home right on the scene where like Doctor Strange, it's still Act 1, and he's his hands were broken, and he's basically just crying like, what am I gonna do with these broken hands? And he's having this scene with his like,
with these broken hands, I'm Benedict Cumberbatch doing an American accent. Anyways, he's good at it, but go ahead.
It was pretty brutal. She knew right away. She's like, what is this? Like, not good.
Oh, really?
Not good. And then yesterday,
I enjoyed Doctor Strange.
but do you enjoy that aspect of it? You know what I mean?
Well, okay.
Like when it's trying to just be a normal movie,
I feel like
not that good.
I feel like I'm not in here trying to say that every Marvel movie is perfect or that like it is really, really good. I think that they're solid. Like phase 1, I would agree with you, David, that Thor's the weakest for sure, but it's still like a decent comic book movie. No one came out of the theater being like, that sucked. You know, it was like, that was fun. That was cool.
Yesterday, I tried to do the same thing to her. I throw on Ant-Man. She doesn't know what I put on.
Yeah.
The very first scene, like, someone walks through a door and enters a space, like a UN-looking space. It's a giant room. It's got like a globe on the wall and a bunch of like digital-looking screens, and then like 4 people sitting on this desk in this big empty room, and they just start talking like melodramatically.
Yeah.
But like, oh, this P particle, nobody can blah blah blah. And she immediately was like, "What is this?"
But that's
why didn't they just put it? Why didn't they just film in like a White House looking room, like with an oak table, like a normal looking conference room, like they have in like in 2001 Space Odyssey? Why does it have to be this like there's a holographic globe spinning? It just looks so stupid.
No, for sure. I mean, like those, but to me, like those elements are just mainstays of comic book movies. Like if you're not talking about kind of like a movie that's trying to take place really in the real world, like Batman, the Batman Begins trilogy, every comic book movie is going to have stuff like that. It's just like crazy holographic technology that doesn't exist now, and we're just saying it does for the sake of this movie.
But it still doesn't. It just didn't even look good or look real. And that's the end of phase 2. That's
why you watch it on a
2015.
17-inch laptop.
How I would define the phases are not necessarily that they're like all getting better. It's that they're starting to take bigger and bigger risks with each movie. And like they would try new genres, they would try new things, and sometimes they would do terrible. Like phase 2 has the worst movie of the entire MCU, which is Thor Dark World.
Yeah.
But it also has one of the best, Guardians of the Galaxy. And it's just because they were trying to see what worked. Phase 1 was like a safe bet. All of them are pretty comic booky. They were like, okay. Phase 2, they're like, all right, we have enough comic book movies, we have this established. Now let's try and see what works. And by phase 3, you're getting like a high school movie. You're getting like more sci-fi. You're getting stuff that's way more out of the traditional comic book movie. And so that's how I would define the phases, is that they were willing to take bigger and bigger risks.
I completely agree with you, and I agree that things get more interesting as time goes on.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for me, it's kind of similar to what we were talking about in the Fountain episode, where I value simplicity done well, and I think that this movie is very simple. It's super simple, keeps it right on the basics. But I think that in going for like an origin story kind of first movie to set up what they're doing, it's almost, I mean, it's not perfect, but like there's very, very little for me to criticize about this movie because I enjoy it from start to finish. The characters are compelling. The writing is snappy and smart. It's just it's a solid ride.
Well, I think it's...
Boy, I don't know, man.
I think we should start right at the beginning because I think that actually the first scene is a really smart way to bring us into this world. It's the first moment. We're in the back of a Humvee. Tony Stark is like kind of having this friendly banter with these soldiers that are awkward, and it does such a good job of giving you all this characterization of Tony Stark, that he's not an asshole. He's good with people. He's very charismatic. He's charming. He's good at disarming them. But he's also a celebrity. But then you get the explosion, and then all of a sudden he's out of the Humvee, and there's insurgents attacking him, and then all of a sudden there's a rocket that lands right by his feet. Stark Industries blows up. We're into the movie. I think that like chunk of movie is perfect.
Wait a second though. You're saying when we're in the back of the Humvee, it's demonstrated that he's not an asshole? But what about the whole thing where he's like,
well, he's not a complete
where that one soldier's like, did you really bang every single Maxim model every month? And he's like, well, I didn't get May, but I had twins in December.
I think but the point isn't that he's not an asshole. The point is that he's fun.
Yeah, and he's
kind of an asshole, but he's fun.
And they have to have room for him to grow. He can't be, because he's actually a pretty decent person at the start of this movie, and he has good relationships with those around him. So it's not like he's a complete jerk. But they have to establish that he still has room to grow while still being a people person that we can like.
I don't know. He's likable, but they do set up that he's an asshole though. Like he fucks people over. He doesn't go to the award show. Instead, his colleague has to like walk up there and accept the award on his behalf.
No, exactly. That's before like this stuff that we're seeing, and I think that's important to set up that he does have room to grow. That he will become a better person than he is now, which is like the main theme.
Here's
of this
my question though: is in that Humvee scene, his statement about banging all these Maxim models, is that supposed to make us think this guy's cool or this guy's a douche?
I think
because it's Act 1.
Well, it depends on who you are.
He is a douche in Act 1. They try to make him not a douche by the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, I'm thinking, okay, maybe they put this line in here to make you think this guy's a douche. But then there's one female soldier in the Humvee, and when he's having this banter, this conversation, she's smiling. She's not upset.
Yeah.
If she was upset, then it would be like, okay, we're supposed to think he's a douche. But the fact that she's smiling, it's like we're supposed to think he's cool. And when I saw this movie as a 19-year-old, I definitely thought that was cool.
I think it's a combo of both. I think you're supposed to be like, wow, he has everything he wants, which is cool. But you're also supposed to be like, oh, he's kind of like an insensitive douche that like has sex with people that for meaningless reasons. Well, I think it's not mutually exclusive.
I would have never thought that a dude bragging about banging all the Maxim models is cool. So I think that what the movie is getting at there is that people kind of forgive these sort of douchey elements of him because he is
rich.
He's fun. He throws wealth around. He's a fun guy. But the whole point is that he is an asshole because that's the starting point for the arc he's going to go through.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think if they had made this movie in 2020 that they would have had that quip in there?
Yeah, for sure. I think they might have had a different reaction from the soldiers, but I think
maybe.
They absolutely would, because like that's such a characteristic like male fantasy douche thing, and that's where this movie is definitely like basic male fantasy, but they need to give you that while still showing that he's like got issues.
Yeah, there were definitely a few points in this movie where I was kind of like, this is like, I don't know if it would fly in a movie release today, like on the private jet when the the flight attendants are also strippers, sort of.
Yeah, or like when they're in that air hangar and Rhodes is giving a speech to a bunch of pilots.
Yeah.
Every single pilot's a dude, and then he's like,
Makes a joke.
pilot needs to have intuition. He needs to know his plane. I was like, oh, they just wouldn't do. I'm not. Hey, and I'm not saying like
I didn't even notice.
I'm not saying
That's
I have
funny.
an issue with this. That they should change the movie before you people
James.
call me an SJW.
Yeah,
I'm
you're-
just all I'm saying is that I don't think they would have made that decision today.
Right.
That's fair.
Right. And that's fair.
Yeah.
Also, what about the reporter who he bangs? Do you think that would have happened if they made the movie?
Yeah, I
today?
think that's
sure.
I think that's a really good little relationship because it shows a lot about Tony Stark.
Totally.
It sets her up so that when she comes back later and kind of gives him the got you moment of like the reporter being like, "Hey, did you know that your weapons are still being sold?" You understand who she is, but it also gives you a great introduction to Pepper.
Totally.
Who when in the next morning when the girl's waking up and she's like, "Oh, where am I?" and she sees Jarvis, all this stuff. Pepper comes in and you get to know Pepper so quickly with so few lines where like, okay, she's Tony Stark's servant.
Servant.
But she's also like this badass who stands up for herself, who's just like, oh, sorry, I also take out Tony Stark's trash.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a little far though. Like that's how they're setting up Pepper. She's actually a total bitch. Like this
The girl
poor-
was being
I don't
rude to
think
her
so.
too. I think it was.
I think she has seen the types of girls that he brings home for how many years now, and she's just sick of it.
Yeah.
She's just like, you're not a person to me in this instance. You're just literally a piece of trash that I have to get rid of now.
Do you think that extra rancor is supposed to suggest that she's in love with Tony?
Yeah, I do actually. I think that they are setting that up from the beginning, and I think she hasn't accepted it herself. She has this professional barrier and kind of this not coldness, but
Distance?
Yeah, that she keeps because that she has to, and like you kind of see that come apart at the ball when she's like, "Oh, it's so stupid that I'm wearing this dress and
Yeah.
I'm dancing with you, and everyone's here seeing me." And she hasn't let that guard down, but I think that she does have feelings from him even before this movie starts.
That whole dynamic of her being his assistant, but having feelings for him, and him kind of having feelings for her, but at the same time he's having sex with all these chicks like left and right. I was just like, oh, this gives me such a weird feeling. Like, I would if I knew her, I'd be like, what are you get out of there?
Who's the director of this movie? It's like
Jon Favreau.
That's Happy, right? The
Yep.
character Happy.
He looks
Yeah.
so good in this movie, and then the stress got to him, I guess, after.
He doesn't have any lines in this movie though.
No.
He wanted
he's got a
Downey
couple.
specifically.
Yeah.
He wanted that like rough weirdness. Like this guy's seen some shit, and I think it's one of those things where like you cast something like that and it brings more attention to the movie. It's like casting Heath Ledger as the Joker.
Right.
You're kind of like, what?
Problem child. I mean,
What's he gonna bring to the role?
I can't think of many other actors where watching the movie, I don't even think about the fact that I'm watching an actor play a person right now. He so fully embodies Tony Stark that the illusion is complete.
He's
And-
like Hugh Jackman as Wolverine.
well,
No?
no, I don't. I mean, I don't feel that way about Hugh Jackman because when I look at Hugh Jackman, I almost see like a Broadway star more than I see like a rough and tumble. Like Wolverine in the comics is like a rough guy,
Yeah.
and Hugh Jackman is just like a
Too pretty?
beautiful.
By
yeah.
the time you get on to Logan, though, he's pretty rough and tough.
But anyways, look, RDJ, I think the other reason that it really works with the acting is because Tony Stark is always acting. Like he's always like performing for people. So even in the moments where Robert Downey Jr. is like a little showboaty or a little like over the top with his acting, it really works with the character because that's Tony Stark.
Totally.
And I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I think this is the role he was born to play.
Yeah. I there's so many moments in the movie where I notice that lines couldn't have been scripted.
They weren't. Because they actually started shooting without a full screenplay written.
Really?
Which is so crazy to me. How the hell does that happen? You have all these screenwriters who are like trying to get their scripts out there. And then I guess maybe they just wrote a treatment and then Marvel was like, yeah, this sounds good. We have the rights to make Iron Man. Let's start doing it.
You know what's so funny about that is that like there were 4 credited screenwriters.
Yeah.
It's Marvel committee.
My guess is that there was a screenplay written that
Yeah.
was done. It's just that the version that they were shooting with, they weren't happy with. So they were like, okay, we got to like leave some room for blanks and whatever.
Maybe they knew that like with Robert Downey Jr. there, and I mean I guess Jon Favreau. I don't know.
Yeah, well, they
there would be a lot
really
of,
rely on that in the second movie where there's literally like Tony Stark will say something here, and there's lots of improv, and it kind of backfires, and it's really bad because he's just not that clever.
I never saw Iron Man 2.
Don't Just skip it.
I don't
heard that people
remember
don't like
if
it.
I did. I definitely didn't see the
It had a
third
lot of
one.
potential. It was the one with Mickey Rourke as Whiplash.
Oh wait, no. Sorry, I saw Iron Man 2. I didn't see Iron Man 3.
Iron Man 3
Who's the villain in the third one?
is the Mandarin, but he's like a red herring villain. It's like Killa something. It's Guy Pearce as Chinese dragon tattoo glowing man.
Killmonger. Kilimanjaro.
Killmonger is Black Panther.
Okay, after that scene, then there's like this gala, the one that he ghosts on, and he's supposed to receive the award. I call it in my notes exposition gala.
Yeah, that I wrote the same thing. That's like as lazy as using a news montage as like an award ceremony thing. Like they do it in Zoolander
For sure.
and this and like
I definitely watching this movie for how I don't know which time. I don't know how many times I've seen this movie, but definitely that part is like I'm like, they could have done this, but it's just so efficient, you know.
It's very efficient, and it keeps dialogue from happening, being like, "But you were a child genius."
Yeah.
Like, it really gives us a lot of detail, and maybe it's necessary because later on, when he's in a cave making things that have never been made ever on Earth, you have to kind of give him the benefit of the doubt, and okay, he made a reactor when he was 4 years old or whatever.
I think that in a more artsy movie, something like that would annoy me because I'm like, find a way to get us that information, show don't tell. But I think for this movie, I appreciate the simplicity. We're here for a fun Iron Man romp, and you got to give the details.
Well,
so,
then immediately after, Rhodey gives the award to Tony, who's not there, and Obadiah has to give that look, and he's like, okay, I'll go step up. And that is a really efficient storytelling where you understand their relationship, both Rhodey, Obadiah, and Tony, all like their dynamic. And you understand that Obadiah is used to Tony being like letting him down, and that he's kind of like planting the seed for his villainy.
But also the other parts of the relationship where like he's a business partner, he's a surrogate father.
Totally.
Yeah. It's a well acted role, by the way. Jeff Bridges slays it.
Jeff Bridges is great. I think that role is a little underdeveloped.
Yeah.
I would say that's like a problem with pretty much every Marvel movie ever, save for like Thanos and Loki, maybe Killmonger and Vulture. But
some of the villains have been very underdeveloped.
Yeah, there's a lot of underdeveloped, and like in superhero origin movies, that's kind of the general rule because like you have to spend all this time developing Tony Stark. You have very little time left developing Obadiah Stane.
The villain is definitely the worst part of this movie.
Yeah,
and
his jump to villainy is so quick.
Okay, let's just do it right now. This is the reason I didn't like Act 3 very much. Yeah. We'll circle back to why I don't like Act 1. Act 2 was great because that has all the great moments of like him learning how to fly. Yeah. And like cut the power, and then he falls through the floor, and Jarvis, like all the fire extinguisher stuff, and then all the other good scenes with Gwyneth Paltrow reaching into his chest, and lots of good stuff in Act 2. Then Act 3 is this weird villain ramp up where it's like, okay, this guy goes from, okay, first of all, they introduce him as a villain by him like rocking up in a Segway, which everyone hates, with a giant cigar.
Wait, what? Yeah. What are you talking about?
He pulls up like when his character.
That's not the moment that he's a villain.
The second time.
It's when he's
still a good guy.
It's when you start to suspect that he could be a bad guy. At this part, he's still congenial with Tony Stark and everything, but he actually rocks up to Stark on a Segway with a giant cigar, and then like goes and has like a confrontation with him. I'm just like, okay, kind of.
I did think that cigar was like a little weird because he just came from that press conference where Tony kind of screwed him over by being like, we're not making weapons anymore. And then what? So like in between that, he just went and lit a cigar for fun. And
maybe he was stressed.
That's what oh man, tough day. Time for a Segway and cigar.
Rich board members do.
That's how I feel better.
But then it just ramps up. Like I believe that he files the injunction to dispose Stark. I believe even that he hires a hit on Stark. I do believe that he starts making his own version of these badass suits. I don't believe that he crawls into one and attacks Pepper Potts and then just like goes up into the surface and is grabbing cars with civilians and then throwing them at Iron Man or fights Iron Man in
or is willing to murder.
Believe that.
He's willing to murder his like surrogate son. He like pulls out the thing and he's like, all right, bye, peace.
Well, see, but okay.
But not willing to just kill him right there. He does that villain thing where it's just like, I'll leave you alive.
Yeah. It's very
counterpoint. is not his surrogate son at all. He hates him because he had control of the company, and then Tony came out of school and he's just like, oh, okay, my time to be CEO, and he just like took over. So he has that resentment built in right from that.
But at the same time,
exposition.
you're spending time with the guy, like 10 years, and you're like, you built the company with his father. Like, they must have spent a lot he probably saw him in diapers.
He might have actually cared for his father, or he might have not. He might have just been. He's an evil corporate guy.
I think the problem
he doesn't really care about family.
He's a stain, goddammit.
Yeah.
I think if they had defined that a little clearer, I think that'd be fine. But I just think that he's a little vague, and like, I think there's a big problem, a big plot hole. Why isn't Tony watching this guy? As soon as he knows that Obadiah is the one that filed the injunction, Tony's a pretty smart guy, right? He can do do some stuff. Why does he not like worry at all about what else that guy is doing? He also sends Pepper to like investigate, get all this information about Obadiah Stane that's going on. Why isn't he protecting himself from him? Why doesn't he have his like security system? Like,
why doesn't he lock his door? Have you noticed? Okay, old Levi Stane gets in, or whatever that guy's name is. Obadiah Stane gets in his house. Later, Rhodes gets in his house, and then after the credits, Nick Fury's in his house. Anyone can just get into Stark's house.
Well, I always figured that his security was smart enough that it would see Rhodes walking up and be like, access granted.
Yeah.
And the same would have been for Obadiah, and Nick Fury just would have hacked it because he's S.H.I.E.L.D. But at that point in the movie, Tony knows that Obadiah is working against him, and I find it very silly that he has no security, no like surveillance, no nothing watching this guy who he knows is now working against him.
Maybe he was just sad. Maybe he was just in his feelings.
But the worst part of all that is
he was though when he said that like, oh, I filed the injunction against you. He just is kind of like numb for a second, and then maybe he's just thinking about life, you know. I'm full on in like I like this movie already, so now I'm defending it mode.
You're doubling down.
But hey, I don't know. I feel like the points are valid. James,
the worst parts about that villain though is that he doesn't reveal anything about Tony Stark. He doesn't expand what we know about Tony Stark. Like, Tony is already fully actualized as a hero before his conflicts with that villain.
Right.
Because he already has gone back to Afghanistan and killed a bunch of terrorists and been a hero and used his weapons for good. He's already done that. So fighting this big bad guy just kind of feels like a tacked on, like there must be a boss fight in this movie.
I would say that there's a big problem with kind of the plot structure, that there's not really a clear goal for him. He's already figured out, you're right, he's already figured out his change. He's like, I don't want to make weapons anymore. I want to do something that's good for the world. But that's in Act 1. And so by the end of Act 2, he's just tinkering with being Iron Man, and then there's like something happening in the background. But all these things aren't like building towards each other. It's not like it's like Obadiah Stane's like actively, that's not true. It doesn't feel like there's a rising action that's happening. It feels like Tony's just building better suits. He's not like, I've got to build better suits to do this. He's just like, yeah, I'll be a superhero now.
That was one of my criticisms of the movie, is that his arc kind of completes very early on, and it's not completed, but the reason, the way that I made sense of that was that he has a change of heart early on, but then his mission is to transform his corporation and his, impact on the world from negative to positive. So the way that he's moving towards that is by building this suit, and that building this suit is the journey from I was here and now I want to get there, where my company is not selling weapons anymore. I'm going to do stuff for good. And the final thing that's preventing him from doing that is Obadiah Stane, who has control of the board. And so by defeating Obadiah Stane, he gains control over himself again.
You're right, actually. In fact, usually in a movie, like before you achieve the thing, it looks like there's no way you can achieve the thing.
Yeah.
And that actually happens when the suits that he's building for good, the Iron Man suit, gets perverted and weaponized into something for evil again. Right. That's like the worst possible thing. And that is what happens. So it does fit in that sense.
There you go.
It's just that's all outer journey stuff, but the inward journey of him becoming who he wants to be, the hero, that is already done.
Yeah, and I if I had another criticism, it would be that switch itself, we don't see a lot of it. Like, we see that the whole sequence where he's in the he's been kidnapped by the terrorists. That whole sequence, like, we could understand that to be that he is building this suit and having a quote unquote change of heart because he just wants to escape, and it's revenge. He's mad that he was able to get captured by these guys. So we don't see. I don't know. Later we see him like seeing the direct effects of his weapons when he goes already like with the suit to go and rescue all the civilians and stuff who are being rounded up.
See,
by the
I
bad
think
guys.
I personally think that the strongest part of the movie is the Middle Eastern parts. That he's having all this growth and this challenge, and like he's kind of like fighting the fact that his legacy is war.
Yeah.
And I think they do a really good job using Yusef to bring out his humanity.
Jensen.
Yinsen. Yeah.
Yinsen?
Yins.
Yeah,
Well,
Yinsen.
it's spelled Yinsen, but it's Yinsen. I don't know. Whatever.
Yinsen. Okay.
The guy's Sean Tube. Great actor. I like
Great
him.
actor. And I think he brings so much humanity.
He's like a human MacGuffin, though.
Yeah, totally. And like he's like
just there.
yeah, he tells you
He's
from the
there
beginning,
to
I'm here to
tell.
die, and
Yeah.
then he dies.
But he's a MacGuffin that makes sense.
He's
Totally.
there to tell Tony, hey, you have everything and nothing.
Right.
You should live for something.
Yep, and that's and it works for me. I feel sad
Yeah.
when he dies, and I'm like, he's at peace. And then it's like badass Iron Man moments.
I actually thought he was going to be a traitor at the end, but he wasn't.
No,
He was
I'm
just a
glad
nice,
he left.
genuine dude.
Yeah.
But actually, I don't like the whole cave sequence.
Oh, really?
I don't like it. And it's not because I don't like the idea of it. Like, I can buy the fact that he's going to make this suit out of nothing. Like, sure. He can repurpose missile parts and make this thing. And I can buy the fact that it's going to have jetpacks on it. It can fly away at the end.
Yeah.
Whatever. I'm watching a Marvel movie. I'm into that. What I don't buy is how the baddies have cameras and they're looking at him and they're not privy to what he's doing. Well, they actually look through the camera and see him with like a leg brace thing on, and his leg is being mechanically extended by this thing, and his leg's going up and down, and they're just looking at the camera going, Like they're starting to get a sense.
But they go in and then they beat them, and then they're like, "We're gonna kill this dude and make him eat a thing of ember." And like,
yeah,
I
and
don't
then
think
it's like
that
you
I think,
have until the morning.
Yeah, you have until the morning. They change it from a week to the next day. So I think you're wrong in that.
I don't know, man. And then when they finally are like, "Oh shit, something's going on in there. Let's get in there." How does he even have time to put the whole suit on? Like that would take hours.
Well, they had been putting it on for
I thought it
hours.
was just
That's
hokey.
that's a whole plot element that it took a long time to put the suit on.
Yeah. And
I don't believe these guards, man. They're really dumb.
It's okay.
Okay,
I
these are-
agree where they could have done it better. I think the fact that there's two head honchos of the Middle
Yes,
Eastern is
that's a
such
big problem.
waste. Just have one dude.
I figured out why they did that.
Why?
Because they have two head honchos, right? When they first meet the gang, like what do you want to call these people? This militia, this terrorist
They're the
group,
10
whatever.
Rings organization.
They meet the 10 Rings. First, it's the one dude who's kind of nondescript, doughier.
short dude with the beard.
And then they introduce this other guy, the bald guy, who eventually gets a big wound on his head, and
Raza.
he's always holding that ring.
Yeah.
So they have these two head honchos, and I was like, wait, what the heck? And which one's in charge? And it kind of feels like the bald dude eventually he gets way more screen time and more characterization. But then later on, I figured it out because he defeats. Does he kill that bald guy when he's escaping?
No.
When does the guy with the ring? Does he defeat that guy?
No, he doesn't kill him because he appears later, and Obadiah Stane uses the paralysis thing.
Oh yeah, right.
And then they kill him.
But the reason there's that second one is because when Tony returns back with his Iron Man suit and saves that little town and shoots all the hostages with his kick-ass missiles things, you need to defeat someone we care about, and that's when the second head honcho is there and gets killed. And if they were just killing like a random terrorist, it wouldn't be as good.
Wait, the second? Oh, you mean the first one we see?
Yeah.
Head honcho number 1 or 2. Yeah. It was a little confusing, but I understood why they did, because then, when they're really in trouble and the soldiers notice that they're not building a missile in there, then the big guy comes in. So I don't know. I feel like it had that.
I think there
and
was
then they burst in and they start opening fire when there's just like, this guy's building a missile. There's literally missiles in the shot.
Yeah, that was dumb.
You're shooting at missiles.
Okay, but you're not. These are like, Middle Eastern terrorist henchmen. They're not university graduates. Like they're not.
Yeah, but you would know.
But
Don't
then
shoot a missile.
Are they not? Because then they pick up all the stuff and rebuild the suit later.
But it might not be
Two
those
guys.
Yeah, it might be like their most educated.
Yeah.
people.
It is that same guy, that guy who speaks Hungarian with the long curly hair. It's literally the same guy.
I didn't notice it was the same guy.
Yes.
They're all just kind of like bad guys.
And
It's been like
also-
6 months. He got a Harvard education.
I also don't buy that, like...
He did it online.
Yeah.
And then Tony bursts out the front door and he has those flamethrowers and he just shoots them at those weapons caches also full of missiles. It's like,
That's
dude,
so
you're
dumb.
dead.
what
You're
is
dead.
going on?
For sure.
I
That
think-
was definitely one of the moments in the movie. Well, one of the few moments in the
Then
movie
he-
where I'm like, that's stupid. He'd be cooking in that thing.
Then he blasts off and survives the landing. And I just made a mental note. I was like, if you're mad that he survived that landing, then don't watch any MCU from now on.
Yeah.
Because it's all like inertia breaking.
You know what's
physics.
funny? I thought I remembered this movie being like pretty realistic in terms of the technology, and it definitely is more realistic than the subsequent every time.
Subsequent.
That's what you get when you read books as a kid and never say the words. Subsequent movies, it's definitely more realistic than those, but yeah, there's a lot of suspending disbelief still that I
think
because the holographic thing where he puts his arm in, it's like, okay, this is slightly in the future, slightly in the future where people have manipulatable holographic technology now. But, building an iron suit in a cave and then like falling from however many 100 feet, it's sand, it's soft.
I think part of why some of those things feel so ridiculous is that the CG really doesn't hold up. And so like
I thought it held up pretty good.
I don't think so. I think there's a lot of like explosions, like that explosion of the camp where it's an actual explosion looks okay. But like when the main baddie shoots a grenade at Tony, he steps aside, and then he shoots the rocket at him, that whole thing looked really bad.
That's
and there's
a
a
tank.
lot of flying stuff that just looks tacky. And I find that always makes me more aware of how ridiculous everything is. There's a few practical effects that are okay. Like I think the scene when he has to change his reactor in his chest, or Pepper has to, that's a really cool scene. Like how did they get that hole in his chest?
Yeah.
Like it looks really cool.
It's really damn deep, man. How did he survive? Is that where your lungs are supposed to be? Does that even make any sense?
Yeah, I feel like that's a bit confusing. Like how did Yinsen get so deep in there? Like this is a major surgery.
It's okay. Every comic book movie, even the best ones, there's still moments where you have to be like, yep, it's a comic book movie.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, he's got padding in the suit or something. That's how he's able to.
You got
But, like,
extra
I have
lung.
I wish they spent more time on the padding.
Yeah.
Because like just being encased in metal,
yeah,
you
be
get
dead.
thrown into a wall.
Yeah, you're hurting. I have a few things where like the comic bookiness of this bother me. Like, so he has that iron suit with these pretty big eye holes. I'm like, one of those bullets would have gone in and fucking blown up his skull. Like,
Well, come on, man.
But then we wouldn't have a movie.
You never know.
yeah, but like,
We don't wanna see
why
that
don't they just
movie.
like do something to cover his eyes? I don't know. The fact that you can see his eyes through it doesn't really help make you connect with his emotion anyway. So just like cover him up.
They should have been smaller. They should have been just like slits.
Yeah. The first time he suits up in that suit and the first time he suits up in the proper Iron Man suit, that's pretty cool.
It's
like,
it's
that's
pretty
pretty
awesome.
sweet.
They do a good job of that reveal because they start by showing his HUD. For his view, like when you're looking at his face and all the electronics in front of it, so you're inside the suit at first,
Yeah.
and then they just show you like parts of the suit, and it's unpainted. They just show the legs, and then it finally culminates on the full view on his face, and it was very satisfying.
It was great. I feel like that's have they done that in movies before this where someone's in a suit and we see like their face inside the helmet and we see like the holographic elements on top? Because I feel like that if this movie added anything to the lexicon of cinematic language,
It's the floating
that
head
shot
and
is
the-
it. Yeah,
And
floating.
it does hold up. I
That
think
has
that's a good
happened in
choice.
cinema long before.
Before Iron Man?
For sure.
No way.
Dude, there's this, I don't know what it was
Inside
called.
the helmet? How
There's
do they
a-
get the camera in there?
What are you talking about? Just a camera close to your face.
What are you talking? What?
It's not even that close. It's like a pretty far long lens because it's like his face isn't distorted. If it was like anywhere close, his nose would be like
Right.
huge and that. So they have it like a far distance away, but it's just a close up,
Yeah,
and then
and
they just CG and
They
everything else.
technologically figured it out this time.
Hey, who's the voice of Jarvis? Paul Bettany.
Paul-
This is the guy
Bettany.
who plays Vision. Who
Oh, it's that dude.
yeah,
Okay.
it's cool that he's the guy they had from the beginning. It's pretty
Yeah.
cool actually.
Oh yeah, right. Because that's the whole thing with Vision.
Yeah.
Oh, and it is the same guy from the beginning.
But apparently
That's
that
pretty cool.
wasn't-
worked
That's
out.
pretty cool.
But
yeah.
apparently that wasn't the plan.
I believe it.
The plan wasn't to have Jarvis become Vision. They just had Paul Bettany as Jarvis's voice because,
Yeah.
and then later when they were like, we're bringing Vision in, they were like, oh, Paul Bettany could be Vision. And the point being that it's cool that Paul Bettany, snagged that role, even though originally he was just supposed to be the AI voice.
So he had the opposite journey of Terrence Howard. How do you think Terrence Howard feels?
Yeah, I was
these
going to
days?
ask you about that.
I wanted
what
to talk
happened?
about this.
Why did they change the actor for War Machine?
I think he just like wanted too much money or like didn't want to keep going.
Supposedly, Terrence Howard was the highest paid actor on the original Iron Man.
Whoa.
And for reasons unknown, Marvel didn't want to give him a pay bump for Iron Man 2, so he was replaced with Don Cheadle.
How is Don Cheadle cheaper than Terrence Howard?
Terrence Howard was pretty big at that time.
Don Cheadle, though, man. Hotel Rwanda.
Well, no, I remember when that movie came out, it was like Terrence Howard. Because he had done some like good indie artsy movies, and he had a lot of clout as like a really good actor.
But he had just done Crash. That was a couple years before, and people like that. Although now people don't like it anymore. But do you think he cries sometimes thinking about it?
Who?
Terrence
Howard?
Yeah.
I'm sure if you ask him, he'll be like, cool. He's like, it is what it is. That's the business. I made a decision. But I think if you got drunk with him,
Yeah.
he might be like, fuck.
Because, like early on, they couldn't really get great actors. It was like pretty good actors. Like Chris Evans was like pretty okay. Tony Stark is like coming up again. Chris Hemsworth was some just handsome nobody.
Oh, man. Okay, so apparently Terrence Howard wasn't super privy to the whole salary negotiations. It was like his agency and stuff, because they're like, hey, our guy here deserves more money, you're not, and Marvel was like, no, we don't want to pay him that much.
Then we're out of here.
Yeah, then we're out of here. But I think that Terrence Howard said he was a big fan of Iron Man, so he was like super excited to be part of it, and he was not happy about
losing out
on the role.
That sucks.
Yeah.
Now that would suck. Oh my God. Can you imagine if someone else messed it up for you?
I liked Don Cheadle and what he did with the role later, but I was sad the first time that I saw him, because I was like, oh, I liked Terrence Howard.
It's just a different character, and they both play it well, and I like both of them. But I just feel bad for the dude.
That kind of happened with Lawrence Fishburne in Pulp Fiction. We never talked about this in the Pulp Fiction episode, but Lawrence Fishburne, it was going to be him and the guy who plays Mr. Blonde in Reservoir Dogs, Michael Madsen. They were going to be like the Vince Vega and Jules characters.
Oh, yeah.
But then Lawrence Fishburne was advised not to take the role by his agent, because he was on an upward trajectory with his career, and he shouldn't play supporting anymore. He should do leading role.
Oh.
Yeah, so it was strategically, he turned it down strategically, but that would have been one of his most iconic roles. But whatever, turned out fine with The Matrix.
That Matrix, yeah. He's doing fine now still. Man, I have a question.
Okay.
Is every superhero movie a male fantasy film?
Dude, that's deep.
I mean, probably.
The easy answer is yes.
Do you think that they could develop superhero movies into something else?
No, because they're all hero's journey. They're all about like power and ass kicking. Like what is not a male fantasy film? Like something like Marriage Story, which is just about like relationships.
I don't think
it's not going to happen in the MCU.
That's not. That's a no one's fantasy.
Like
film.
a war film where it really does depict war as shitty. I think I was thinking about this. Like Logan, I guess, is like a non-male fantasy, because like it sucks to be Logan.
Okay, but
he's having a bad time.
like a tragedy versus a comedy.
Yeah, like.
But why are we making a dichotomy between male fantasy films and like everything else? Because like what else could a superhero movie is inherently a power fantasy of some kind, because you have super powered people and that the audience is projecting themselves onto.
Mm-hmm. So,
I mean, could you have a more feminine power fantasy? But that's the thing, is that I'm not saying that girls wouldn't see themselves in these heroes, right? I think that anybody could see themselves in these heroes, depending on your preferences. But I think that, psychologically or like symbolically speaking, of course, the big powerful hero who like goes and like accomplishes things, goes out into the forest and hunts and provides for people and saves the day. That's going to be a symbolically, psychologically male thing, I guess, if you're talking about that. But
yeah,
I'm not saying, but I don't think that it necessarily only appeals to males.
No, for sure. And
it
I think
definitely does on the whole.
The Marvel movies have done a good job of kind of broadening the appeal of comic book movies. And it's not even like, I mean, as like a male-female thing. I mean it more generally when you're referring to like media or like a video game as like a power fantasy. It's like a negative thing. And I wonder if like that's part of why Martin Scorsese kind of comes down on the Marvel movies, because like they're inherently power fantasies.
Well, so are Scorsese movies.
I think the bad ones are.
That's a good point.
Like that's why Wolf of Wall Street's kind of silly. It's like it's a power fantasy about like that, and like he doesn't.
But they all are. Casino is, Goodfellas is.
But they're way more artsy.
Not Taxi Driver. I'd say Goodfellas isn't though. It's like it's about how it messes him up, and in the end, like,
But they all are rags to riches to rags stories. Same with Wolf of Wall Street.
They're kind of power fantasies for a bit, and then they turn into tragedies.
yeah.
So
I
it's
think
like,
that a Marvel movie could conceivably tick the box that you're talking about, David, depending on the ensemble. Like, because I'm thinking about, of course, Dune. So most people don't know a lot about Dune, but
James's Star Wars.
But you know about Game of Thrones. Dune is kind of Game of Thronesy,
Right.
And lots of women like Game of Thrones, and there's power dynamics at play, but it's about the relationships between all these different people and going behind people's back and like the subtle knife kind of thing.
For sure.
And I think if there's a universe, if there's a property in the Marvel universe that has those dynamics, then that could work.
I think that as the MCU progresses, it definitely becomes a lot more about the relationships between the different characters and less about, ooh, this guy's building a really cool suit.
Yeah.
Look how hard I can punch!
Yeah. It's almost, I think we talked about this in a previous podcast, but as the MCU goes on, you think less and less about how these things are working and who is developing more powerful suits and powers and stuff, and more about these guys can just blast holes in walls with their minds. Okay, cool. We don't really need to spend a lot of time on that. That's just the way it is. But now we're talking about what they want to accomplish and their motivations and the way that they relate to the other characters and stuff like that.
Do you guys think that the ending of this movie is at all okay?
You mean the final scene?
Like the fight.
Where he's like, oh. I want to say the final scene is badass.
Yeah,
When he's
well,
like,
that's great.
I am Iron Man.
Yeah,
boom, credits, boom.
awesome.
That was the most satisfying
great.
ending ever.
I agree.
Yeah,
Especially because the trope is that they all have to keep their secret identity. Like Spider-Man was huge a couple years before, and that was such a huge theme, was him having to hide his Spider-Man.
Same with Batman.
Yeah.
And they just dispose of it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. That's excellent. But I mean more the fight with Obadiah. I feel like that whole sequence is such a snore.
How does he?
What?
Okay, so
you're so weird, David.
Yeah, thank you.
David.
So he grabs them and he flies up into the stratosphere where their suits become icy.
I like that.
Before that, they're punching.
Yeah, they're punching really hard.
There's lots of punching.
And like they've set up that, okay, Iron Man's suit's gonna be way better, but he only has like 17% power because he's using that recycled chess piece. Arc reactor.
Which is his new heart, by the
Yeah.
way, which is very symbolic. You know,
Yeah.
he has to, because
Ooh.
Pepper Potts takes it out of his chest and labels it, proof that Tony Stark
I didn't
has
even
a heart.
think of that.
Here's my question for you. I thought the arc reactor was just keeping the magnet going that keeps that shrapnel out. I don't think it was keeping his heart going.
No.
No.
It's protecting the shrapnel from reaching his heart.
Yeah,
he's saying symbolically it's his.
Yeah,
new heart.
no. I agree symbolically, but
Metaphor, David.
would taking it out for like 10 minutes really kill him?
No, I think the implication is that he would have, maybe weeks to live.
But then there's that scene where he's crawling and they're
Yeah,
trying
but
to
that's
create that
because
tension.
he
That's because
was
of
given
the
that
paralysis.
paralyzer.
Yeah, but so it's like a false drama that it's like, oh, he'll just wake up and then he can do it fine. And like
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Well,
because
but he's also going for it because he has to go save.
for sure.
Pepper.
but putting it in isn't going to help him with the paralysis.
No.
Like, he could have just waited for the paralysis
Well,
to
and
wear
we see that because he gets it in his chest, but then he's still there, knocked out when Rhodey comes and gets him.
But, okay, so the fact that he has to crawl over to get the replacement in his chest, I guess, implies that the shrapnel would migrate into his heart within minutes or 10 hours.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think that they don't know how long he would have to live without the thing, so better have it in all
This
the time.
guy can't get surgery when he gets home?
Yeah, you see, I feel like in this world of incredible technology, it's not that unrealistic to have that thing.
I'm not a surgeon. I'm not Doctor Strange. What do I know?
Yeah, I think in the second one they do take the stuff out, but he keeps it because he's Iron Man.
How about that product placement? I want an American cheeseburger. The next scene, boom, Burger King bag.
Yeah, I love that though. And she's like, "No, we have to get to." He's like, "Cheeseburger first."
Yeah, but that's fine.
Yeah.
And then it's a Burger King cheeseburger.
Well, whatever, man. Did that bother you?
That was so. It was just so.
What
blatant.
about
That
all
one
the
doesn't
Audis?
bother me as
Audis.
much.
Tons of Audis. There's like some watch faces that come like full frame. It's just a little.
But
it's a little.
It would bother me if it was
obnoxious.
like out of character or something for him to be like, actually, I'm going to stop and get a cheeseburger. It's like, well, no, but I could totally. That's such a Tony Stark thing.
Well, why can't it be Big Kahuna Burger?
Because
they don't have the
copyright.
bucks.
Yeah.
They don't have the Benjamins.
Because they don't exist. Because they're fictional. Like in Pulp Fiction, it's a fictional burger.
Well, I don't know.
It just makes it a little more commercial and
You would rather
American.
a Marvel movie have a bunch of nondescript, copyright-free options.
in Quentin Tarantino movies, it's always Apple brand cigarettes. it's an in-universe big brand, and because there's lots of Tarantino movies, that brand is in lots of movies, and then this fans start to. It's not nondescript anymore. It's Apple.
But you're treating the Marvel movies like they're an artistic vision.
Right.
They're a money-making machine, and so how can they make money? Putting Burger King in. How do they put money in?
Sure, I agree with you, but I'm just saying it would be a little nicer if there wasn't so like.
I guess
on the
I'm
nose with that.
So
like,
desensitized to that.
we wouldn't get these movies then because this is how they pay for themselves.
Sure.
I guess at this point I'm so desensitized to them, and that ones like that where they're like pretty slickly integrated into what's going on, it doesn't bother me nearly as much as Superman smashing into an IHOP. Like that's it had such jarring product placement that is so makes so little sense with the story that like stuff like that is just like it happens and goes and you're done.
I really don't
I'm okay with them driving Audis the whole like every movie has a brand that they drive around.
Yeah.
But I thought that the Burger King one was a little
that's
much.
Well, but how are we supposed to? I want to stay on this for one more minute. How are we supposed to? You want him to hand him a burger bag and have it just be like a blank bag?
Well, yeah, it could be
Or
just like a greasy
logo
bag.
they make up.
But why would they do that when they could make some extra money by having it be a Burger King bag?
Because then I'm looking at it like, oh, Burger King, yeah, cool. I need to get the Whopper. It's Wednesday. Like, it's, it's an ad. I don't want that.
I don't like being manipulated.
I don't want it to be an ad.
But what if I want a Whopper?
Unless it's Blade Runner 2049 and it's an Atari logo or a drink Coke and it's like a parallel universe.
I want product placement for a company's products that don't exist in this timeline.
But that works because it's like part of a telling the story of like the corporatization of America, where I can agree where like you could have the same jokes and have it be more invisible instead of having a BK logo. So I can agree there.
What did you guys think about the moment where Rhodes is watching Tony Stark suit up and then he's like, do you need me to do anything else? And he's like, just keep the skies clear. And then he takes off, and then Rhodey looks at the Mark I, and he's like, next time, baby.
Unless my agent fucks me over.
Next time, baby, and he never got to. I just realized that.
Press
line.
F for Terrence Howard, boys.
That was a great line and great
F's in the
delivery,
chat.
too.
I had such glee the first time that happened. And I'd say that like all of the like superheroes discovering their power bits, the first time I watched this movie in 2008 was filled me with glee and excitement. But now that we've seen
Specifically Glee.
But now that we've seen like 20 different superhero origin movies since then, I find all that stuff kind of rote and like boring.
David.
And it's not super exciting to me. To
David.
see I'm like, okay, I'm going to tinker and I'm going to make a thing on... Okay, now I'm gonna fly. I'm like,
you've
cool.
just been desensitized.
It was
to
the
it.
first one.
You need to go back to basics.
But I'm watching this movie in 2020, and I've seen Ant-Man, I've seen Captain Marvel, I've seen Spider-Man 2, I've seen like 17 different Batmans, I've seen Spider-Man.
Not only that,
I've seen Uncle Ben die 5 times.
You know what you gotta do?
I've also seen demos from literally Microsoft here on the planet Earth being like, this is the HoloLens and this is what it's going to look like, and you can use your hand to move this thing. So back in 2008 when has that computer with the augmented reality and he can manipulate with his hand, it's like, wow, I've never even thought of that before.
Totally.
That would be so cool.
I feel like in order to enjoy a movie like this, you have to go back mentally and pretend as best you can that you haven't seen all those other movies, right? Because like I said earlier that one of the reasons why I enjoyed watching this movie again was knowing all the stuff that happens later. But I think that I was able at the same time to pretend that this is put myself back in 2008 and being like, okay, what have I seen before this? I've seen the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, which I'm sure a lot of people love, but I didn't love. The Daredevil.
2 Hulks.
Realistic Spider-Man, the 2 Hulk movies that swing and a miss both times.
So wait, is the Ed Norton one canon? Is that
It's
MCU?
canon, yeah. So that's Mark Ruffalo's character, but just played by
And I didn't
someone
hate
else.
that one. I thought that one was okay. Tim Roth was good. But put myself in that mindset, and then, that it's so much more enjoyable that way. You know what I think you have to do, David? It's just watch less movies. Only watch a few movies.
I can't. I watch like 10 movies a week. I can't stop.
Do you actually?
Yeah, probably.
That's mad.
I watch a movie probably 3 or 4 nights during the week, and then I watch at least 4 on the
A
weekend.
full movie?
Yeah, for sure.
4 on a weekend. There's at least one day in the weekend.
I'll
we're doing
do 2.
Do
At
you
least.
go outside?
No,
You
not really.
multitask?
Sometimes, if it's like if I wasn't watching Iron Man for this podcast, I was just watching it to rewatch it, I for sure would multitask.
What would be your secondary activity?
Either like being on my phone or cleaning or
Wait. you for these podcasts, you watch movies while you're cleaning?
No.
and stuff?
If I wasn't for the podcast, I sit there, take notes, and I 100% pay attention. I don't let my girlfriend talk.
Oh my god.
She doesn't talk in movies very often.
Actually, she does. I've watched movies with her. She's a talker.
Sometimes.
Michaela.
Sometimes. I love you, Michaela. But yeah.
That's too many movies, David.
No, I love movies.
But then you come in here and you be like, "There's nothing new in this movie. I'm upset."
But then there is movies that blow me away. And it's the same thing. I just love movies and appreciate them. And I remember having this phenomenon happen in film school where you learn more about movies, and it makes you like movies less, but it makes you like the movies you like way more because you have now a vocabulary to express what makes them so special.
Then that's definitely the dilemma, I guess, eh? Like watch a ton of movies and have a more nuanced understanding of each entry in the medium, or watch less and be happier. Ignorance is bliss.
Sometimes.
Watch it on a 17-inch laptop.
That's why we're a great
Or
podcast. We have all the levels.
The back display of a Honda Odyssey. That's my new favorite.
That was a good one.
I like that.
I like
Whoever
that meme.
tweeted that,
Thank you.
I retweeted you, so I should remember what your account is, but I forgot. That was a great tweet.
There's lots of great tweets on our Twitter
Oh!
at Carpool Critics. Hey, we're going to do something different right now, Riley. We didn't even tell you about this.
Oh, no.
David is going to read out a very special review that someone left for us
Okay.
on their podcast platform.
This is written by Random Eloquent Nerd on Apple Podcasts. He says, a rather eclectic mix of people providing insight on a diverse range of cinema from the perspective of not only the layman, but also a former film student.
We're laymen, me and Riley.
Also, to all the LTT Techlink fans out there, did you need anything more than James, Riley, and David in a single podcast? Of course you don't.
Oh.
So he switched tenses there? He went from
Guys,
past tense
don't
to
criticize
present?
the review.
I didn't notice that. I loved it.
I
don't
loved
listen
it too.
to
Thank you, Random Eloquent Nerd.
But I don't appreciate how that discounts the possibility of liking later LMG podcasts, which may come.
So thank you, eloquent writer, nerd, reviewer guy.
Random eloquent nerd.
This is awesome. We read that out because we want to encourage you guys to write more reviews because it really helps us and get the podcast shown to people. Because someone said recently, I think also on Twitter, like, not enough people are listening to this for how sick it is. So you guys should share this stuff. And if you write a review, maybe we'll read it out. That's incentive. More people will see the podcast.
Ooh. Yeah. If you want other people to see us read your reviews and then show them.
But we don't want to be like patting ourselves in the back. Like we don't want to read out reviews that are just like, these guys are great.
Yeah.
Write something funny in there that's going to grab our attention. We'll read yours out.
Write a review just skewering us.
No.
Just take us
I can't
apart.
handle it. My
Ooh.
self-esteem's too small.
I want to read one of those.
Just praise David and just roast me and
Yeah.
Riley.
Yeah.
Speaking of funny reviews, I found some good 1-star and 5-star reviews of this movie. My favorite one, though, is from Sarah Diamonds, a user on Common Sense Media. She gives the movie 1 star. Very boring.
Whoa.
I did not enjoy it at all.
Oh.
A lot of sexual dialogue use. Smoking at one point.
Oh, no.
A sex scene. Couldn't see anything, but could clearly hear everything. AKA rank.
Oh, wow.
1 star.
Is that like a rural Michigan mom or like
I don't know.
I always wonder who.
No offense to rural Michigan moms, but like that one, she needs to relax.
Wait, there's more here. I would be super mad if I hadn't got the seniors discount. Just joking. Yeah.
This is a pretty tame movie by all those standards, even.
I know. I read one for The Fountain that was like, they use the F word in this movie. I don't like that. It's like,
It's like leave, go away.
Go.
You're the wrong person to leave a review.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to do this.
everyone else leave reviews for us, though. That's good. Also, you can email us at carpoolcriticspodcast@gmail.com. And we're actually collecting quite a bit of questions for our mailbag episode.
Yeah, when are we gonna do that?
I don't know.
We got to do it
Soonish?
soon, I guess. Like we don't want to have too many questions. We want to have the exact right amount.
A recent guy went real deep. He's asking about like the nature of love and stuff. So more deep questions, people.
Heck yeah, dude.
Heck yeah.
Ask us to talk about quantum mechanics. I got lots to say.
Also, I want some emails from our female listeners. I know 5% of you are female, and some of you, actually, I think most of the women that listen to this podcast are like cinephiles. Otherwise, why listen to these 3 dudes just yammer on? So
talk
actually,
about male power fantasies.
so why don't you guys, you ladies, message us and give us some interesting questions from the other side of the aisle?
You know what? Everybody message us. Just everybody who's listening to this, write a message right now. Send it in. If you don't, I know that you did not do it.
Yeah, let us know if you want us to do more MCU coverage, because I'd love to work our way through the MCU, but we need you guys to tell us that you want that.
So this is the phase one.
This is the phase
coverage.
1 movie.
Before we do another MCU movie, we're doing Revenge of the Sith.
No.
What do you guys don't want to do it now?
I'd way rather do episode 1.
No, stop.
No. We talked about this. If we're doing a prequel, it's Revenge of the Sith.
I agree. Let's wait for Luke and Linus to do their commentary, and we can.
I thought we were gonna
ride
do that
wave.
episode 1, the version of episode 1 that's like a fan edit where they made Jar Jar have like an unintelligible alien language, and they like
Ooh,
they fixed it
maybe.
a bit. You don't want to see something you've never seen before?
No. I just want to see lightsaber
Well,
fights.
what should we do next week? I was thinking I want to do a Mel Brooks movie sometime.
Maybe we should do the mailbag episode next week.
Maybe you should be the mailbag.
I think we should do it.
You should shave your bag with a Manscaped Lawnmower 3.0. That's enough.